Hello gamers and welcome to the Casual Diablo channel. I have hit level 100 and therefore it is time for the build guide with the build I was playing, so the Ice Shards Sorcerer. Alright, let's get right to it. So let's start with the overview of the build. First off, a little bit of information for you guys. So there are a lot of Ice Shards builds and more or less they are probably similar. I don't know exactly what they are because I haven't looked at any other build guides, any other builds from streamers, from pros. This is my own take on it. I am extremely happy with it and I am clearing very high tier content, so I guess I must be doing something right. A few of you asked for the build guide in the comment, so here it is. Let's start with the high level overview. First of all, how strong is this build? So the clear speed of the build, I would rate 10 out of 10. The speed at which I go through dungeons or just through the world, like the Hell Tide, is insane. I just teleport around, one-shot packs of mobs, packs of elites, no problem, one-shot everything. It's just the clear speed is as good as it gets. I don't think any other build can have a better clear speed. Maybe some have the same, but definitely not faster. The other thing is bossing or single target damage. This is something that's not the strongest side of this build. I would still say it's like 7.5 out of 10 because it can kill bosses. It can kill the Butcher when I meet him in the Nightmare dungeons on very high tiers, or the dungeon bosses. I can also clear those with quite ease. It just takes a little bit. Not that much, but you can see in the build showcase that will be running later. Regarding the tankiness, how hard is to kill my sorcerer? It's very hard to kill it. There is a lot of life, there is a lot of barrier, there is a lot of quality of life in the build. I would say it's super tanky build, definitely hardcore viable. I would say it's 10 out of 10. Obviously, saying hardcore viable would require a little bit of a respec on the Paragon tree, because I am mostly going for damage, but still, I barely ever die. Okay, so what in my opinion, are the three strengths of this build? First is the insane quality of life. It's like insane. The teleport skill gets you fast everywhere. You're frozen? No problem. Teleport away. You're unstoppable. Teleport on cooldown. There's Flame Shield, another break for CC. So all of that combined with how fast the sorcerer is, it's just such a pleasure to play. It's very easy and very satisfying. The second thing is that the leveling part, it just steamrolls the campaign. It completely steamrolls the campaign. I have played from level 1 till I think 75 before I first died, and the whole campaign I was pretty much one-shotting everything. One-shotting the mobs, one-shotting the elites. Took a little bit of time for the bosses, but it's just total steamroll and very satisfying. No respecs on the way, so very easy to pick up and keep going all the way to the end of the campaign. And just the way that this build plays is extremely satisfying. So you teleport up to them in the middle of the pack, in the middle of the monsters. You freeze them and you explode and they shatter. It feels so good. It feels so good. I haven't played another action RPG that made my character feel so powerful and so good in a while. Okay, there are some weaknesses. Of course, every build has some weaknesses. There is no perfect build. So the damage has downtime. What does it mean? The build is stacking cooldown reduction, because the combo for damage is you freeze mobs with Ice Nova, and then you hit them with your Ice Shards and they explode. But even with a lot of cooldown reduction, still Ice Nova has a little bit of a cooldown. So there are moments where you're not able to output big damage. So this is one weakness. The second one is monster death effects. Well, a lot of mobs explode, but when they are frozen and you shatter them, they don't explode anymore. However, some of them leave like a poison explosion behind or a fire explosion behind. And in higher level Nightmare Sigils, there is also this mod that makes mobs die and leave lightning explosion behind. Since you teleport inside the pack of the mobs and kill them all, this explosion might be deadly. So this is one thing that is a downside, is a weakness of this build, but it can be managed, it can be played around. And the last thing is something I have already mentioned, so the single target damage. Alright, this is the overview. Let's get into details. How to level, how to gear, and how to set up your Paragon board. Let's get right into the game. Alright, let's look at the character in the game. So, let's go to the skills right away and start with the skill tree. Here we go. The 2 points, the mandatory 2 points go into Firebolt. It's actually relevant if whether you put 2 over here in the skill or 1 in this. I'm not even using this skill. You just have to put 2 points here. Up next, we have, of course, Ice Shards, so our DPS output. We are using greater Ice Shards that treat enemies as if they were frozen when we have a barrier active, which is always. And here we can see that while you have a barrier active, this is the extension, Ice Shards always ricochet off frozen enemies. So we are getting a lot of ricochets and a lot of projectiles going everywhere from one monster to another, and the bigger the monster pack, the better for us. 1 point here, 3 points into elemental dominance, because this is a core skill and we want our core skills to deal a lot of damage when cast above 50 mana. Let's remember that. Right here you can see I have a lot of points, but this is coming mostly from my amulet. The points that I have is actually 1 point here, 1 point here. Here we're going for a shimmering flame shield. That is just another sustain that we are using. And here we are going for another sustain. So after teleporting, we gain 30% damage reduction. We are going to be teleporting right in the middle of the biggest pack of mobs, so this is very useful for not dying. Frost Nova, so as high as you can get. Right here at level 100, I have rank 12. Obviously, I am aiming for rank 16 whenever I drop my Shaco, but I wasn't lucky yet. Why do we want to stack that? To reduce the cooldown. This is the only way. So currently my cooldown is 9.14 seconds. Well, it's a little bit less than that in reality, but I will get to that later. We want to be casting that to be able to freeze the monsters around us and deal damage to them. You can see that killing enemies frozen by Frost Nova reduces the cooldown by 1 second. Sometimes it means that the Frost Nova will be available immediately after. And the second thing, we're using Mystical Frost Nova, which makes enemies vulnerable. Another keyword that is key for this build. Alright, up next we have 3 points in Align the Elements for some damage reduction against elites. We have 3 points into Protection. Using a cooldown grants 30% of your maximum life as a barrier. So we are going to be using a lot of cooldowns all the time. And that will mean barrier, all the time barrier. So much sustain, so much life. That's why this build is super tanky. And here's my personal tech. I am using Ice Blades. I know a lot of people are running the ultimate. I don't. I think it's useless. I don't want a skill that does a little bit of something for every 1 minute, or even with my cooldown reduction every, say, 40-35 seconds. I don't want that. I want a skill that is doing something constantly. That's why I'm using Ice Blades, not for the damage, of course. But here we can see that Ice Blade's cooldown is reduced by half a second each time it hits a vulnerable enemy. Well, that's a lot of them. And here we can see that 20% of the Ice Blade's cooldown reduction is applied to your other skills. Read Frost Nova. This is what we are all about. We want the Frost Nova to be available as soon as possible. 3 points in Precision Magic to increase our lucky hit chance. We are also stacking that. I covered those already. Pretty much no skills here, just the passive. So 1 in Inner Flames to enable this, Devouring Blaze. We deal 30% multiplicative increased critical strike damage against burning enemies. Well, we are burning enemies all the time. I will show you why in a sec. All of the frost passives to the maximum over here. And last but definitely not the least, the Avalanche. And we are actually doubling that with our items, which I will show in a second. So what does it say? It says that if we lucky hit, and we are stacking lucky hit everywhere, your frost skills have up to 10% chance to make your next cast of Ice Shards consume no mana and deal 30% increased damage. Chance is doubled against vulnerable, which is vulnerable a lot, enemies. This is insane. So this is the skill tree. There is only one thing I use different for leveling. So when I was leveling, I was actually putting just 1 point into Hydra over here, 1 point into this one, and I think I went I'm not sure which one I was using, but I was just using 1 point in Hydra over here while leveling, because while leveling, Hydra is a skill that's a very efficient use of your mana. So you just put one on the ground and you fight around your Hydra. So it was worth it. Only for the campaign though, I dropped it as soon as I finished. Alright, this is the skill tree. What is the other most important thing? Well, the enchantments. So the first is obviously Ice Shards. Ice Shards automatically conjure and fly towards frozen enemies. That's right, this is what makes the Ice Shards fly all over the screen, ricochet like crazy, because all enemies are frozen, and if they are not frozen, they're treated like frozen. So crazy, crazy stuff. And the Firebolt enchantment, this is the only reason we're having this Firebolt. Direct damage from skills applies up to an additional some number burning damage. That means all of the enemies that we deal damage to are burning. And you saw how important that is in combination with our other skills. Let's go look at our items before we look at the Paragon boards. So the items. Let's start with the offensive legendary aspects. So on the gloves, I'm having the avalanche, so the passive I was talking about, to now apply one additional cast. I think this is super important. This makes our Ice Shards consume no mana pretty much a lot of the time, and we are going to be doubling this bonus pretty much because we have this one. Core, Ice Shards is core skill, cast at or above 100 mana, gain up to 60. I don't have the best roll yet, but I will be min-maxing this build in a few days. Have increased critical strike chance. Critical strike chance. Can you imagine 60% increased critical strike chance? Let's look at my stats. Offensive, critical strike chance 48. 48 plus 60, that's above 100. That means you are going to be critting all the time if you cast your Ice Shards at or above 100 mana. And you might ask, well, how do you get above 100 mana? Well, I am at 123 right now. And believe me, when I play in the dungeons, I pretty much stay above 100 all the time. So I crit all the time. That's why it's important to put this on the amulet, because if you put an affix on the amulet, it gets 50% stronger. So if I were to put it on the gloves, I would only get up to 40% of crit strike chance, and on the amulet I get up to 60. So this is crazy. On the rings, on one I have using a cooldown, restores 25 mana. That's right. I want to be staying at high mana, almost at the highest mana I can get at maximum, above 100, and I will be using cooldowns like crazy. So I have teleport, which is a cooldown, frost nova, which is a cooldown, ice blades, which is a cooldown, flame shield, another cooldown, ice armor, cooldown, and the damage, not cooldown. So I will be restoring mana crazy fast. On the other ring, I have another imperfect roll yet, but we deal 22% increased damage while you have a barrier. Do you remember that we have a barrier every time we use a cooldown, and we're using a cooldown all the time? So we always deal 22% or 25% because this is the desired go-to item. You can see that this ring is not the strongest so far, but I will cover the items after I go through legendary aspects. On the weapon, I have deal up to 35% more damage to frozen enemies. And on the offhand, I have the mandatory top Ice Shards pierce 4 times. Make sure you get 4 additional pierces, not 3. Dealing, and here you want 20%. I have it already somewhere here prepared to roll on whenever I get a better offhand. This one is pretty good, but I will probably get better quite soon. So those are the offensive legendary aspects. Let's look at the other gear. So on my helmet, I have 20% increased CC duration. So when I freeze enemies, I want them to stay frozen for longer. And when they become unstoppable, if they break freeze somehow, I deal 50% more damage to them. On my chest, I have gain 0.5% increase armor for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage, stacking up to 50%. It gets up to 50% very quickly because Ice Shards deal a lot of small hits, like a machine gun. So you hit a lot of, this procs a lot, and you go up to 50% very quickly. The gloves were covered already. The pants. So we take 25% less damage from CC, all vulnerable enemies. Our enemies, as we have saw from the skill tree, are vulnerable at all times. And last are the boots. So offensive, lucky hit chance is increased by 20% when we have a barrier, and I think by now you know that we have a barrier all the time. All right, let's now look at the items again, but now look at the rolls. So the helmet. On the helmet, you want cooldown reduction, so the CDR. This is the best roll. The others are here. I have crowd control duration. This is very nice to have them frozen for a little bit longer. I have some life. I have some int. This helmet is average at best, to be honest. So I'm looking for a different one, but those are the stats I am looking at. On the chest, you want some damage reduction from enemies that are burning. This is the key stat. You want this as high as possible. For example, I have also damage reduction from distant enemies. To be honest, I would prefer to have damage reduction from close enemies on my armor, but distant is also okay. So, for example, from archers when you try to get to the mob. Some frost kill damage, not the best, but a little bit more DPS, and flat percent damage as well. So on the gloves, we actually want attack speed, because attack speed makes our ice shards be cast faster. That spends more mana, of course, spends your mana faster. But when you get to a big lucky hit chance, like I do, and high level enough, you actually are able to sustain your mana above 100, even with extra attack speed. Crit strike chance is pretty much mandatory, plus 4, so you get plus 3, and then you upgrade the item to level 5, then that's how you get plus 4 ranks of ice shards. This is mandatory, of course, and the lucky hit chance I think is also best in slot. So those 4 affixes that I have on my gloves are best in slot. The rolls are not the best yet, but they're pretty good. So defense is a defensive item. You want damage reduction, as much damage reduction as you can. So I have damage reduction from burning, from close, and from distant enemies, and some life on top of that. Actually, a perfect roll. So I think this is very good. Maybe the implicit is not the greatest for those pens. There are better implicits, but it's not that big of a deal. It's nice to have some extra movement speed for 2 seconds anyway. The boots, you definitely want some movement speed. You definitely want Frost Nova, again, plus 4. Then mana cost reduction is also very good, because if your ice shards cost less, it's easier to sustain the maximum mana. And I guess some int is good, but this stat is not very relevant. Anything would do here. Int just increases your damage, so that's nice. The weapon. So in the weapon, the DPS of the weapon is very important. You want the implicit to be the lucky hit chance, and the key stats for the weapon is 1. Vulnerable damage, 2. Crit strike damage. Those 2 are like must have. If the item doesn't have both, it's garbage. Just throw it away and look for a different one. Obviously, I'm talking about endgame items, not leveling items. Damage to frozen enemies is just a little bit of extra DPS when they're frozen. And the core skill damage is very important, because it applies all the time, not just when enemies are frozen. It applies all the time because the ice shards is a core skill. All right, for the offhand, CDR. CDR is the key. So CDR in the implicit and CDR on the item. The higher, the better. Remember, you are dealing damage when the enemies are frozen, and they are frozen when you are casting Ice Nova. So you want the CDR. This is the top stat, number 1. Crit chance is the second stat that you're aiming for. And the rest, there are multiple choices. I like to go for more lucky hit chance, so I get double of that. So one always, and the other one when I have a barrier. The rolls are they are okay. So you can see that this item is also pretty good. For the rings, again, just like on the weapon. So vulnerable damage and crit strike damage, those 2 are like mandatory. They are must have. The third best is critical strike chance. And now for the last, you have some options. So you can go for lucky hit chance, you can go for core skill damage, you can go to frozen enemies damage, burning enemies damage, frost damage. I believe it's called cold damage, I think. So, or damage to crowd controlled enemies. So there are some options. They are all okay. They're increasing your damage output, but the 3 that are the best is vulnerable, crit strike damage, and crit strike chance. You can see on this ring, I don't have vulnerable damage. This is actually the number 1 item I need to replace. I've been rolling multiple rings trying to get some actual good roll. Don't have it yet, but I know that once I will equip one, my damage will go even higher. So the amulet, number one stat CDR. CDR is like number one. The second one is all defensive skills. Why? So first defensive skill. Let's look at the defensive skills to illustrate that. So the defensive skills are over here. So one is the Frost Nova. So you want to increase the rank of the Frost Nova, and this is the number one reason why you want the defensive skills on your amulet as high as possible. The second one is very nice, actually. So while increasing the teleport has a benefit of reducing its cooldown. That's good. That's not like game-changing, but it's pretty good. But you are also getting ranks to Ice Armor, which you don't have. You don't have it. I didn't put any points here. And because of my amulet, I'm actually able to use the Ice Armor on my left click. So a free skill, which is a cooldown, which is more tankiness. Super cool. So yeah, that's the amulet, defensive skills and CDR, top stats. And the rest is, again, you can go for some lucky hit chance, you can go for some damage, CC duration, is the quality of life. There are different options here, but remember that CDR and defensive skills is must-have. So I covered the rings, I covered the offhand. I think that concludes all the items. So let's go to the skill tree, the Paragon boards. All right. So for the starter tree, I have actually put my flame feeder here. Although a different gem was here not that long ago for leveling. So for leveling, I was using the gem for that. No, not this one. Sorry. Yeah. So exploit was here when I was leveling to increase my vulnerable. It was moved to the second board because it gets a bonus for every 5 dexterity points. And this board enables me to get 49, but the starter board goes 39 only. So we go from the right side. Right here we're stacking dexterity in the area. Here we go for the rare nodes, so a bit of non-physical damage. Well, quite a big bit. Right here we have another rare. We go to the top and we choose the second board. The second board, the first board that I am actually choosing is the Burning Instinct. As you can see, I'm not even using the legendary node, but there are a lot of good nodes. So first, right here, we have the possibility to put 49 dexterity around in the area of the glyph. We are using the exploit glyph here for as much vulnerable damage as possible. We are obviously going for the damage to burning enemies. You saw that our enemies burning all the time, so this is a nice synergy. And this is the first board because we want the additional bonus requirements to be met easily. So as you can see, we have it here. We also go for this one, so damage reduction from enemies that are burning. Very nice defensive one. Right here we are also going for a chance to execute non-elites. We have the kindling, so damage to burning enemies again, damage to elites, very nice node. And here for some survivability. From this board we are actually living in every direction, so we are using all possible exits. The second board that I chose is this one. So this board, where is the legendary node that we are using right here? So Frigid Fate. So dealing cold damage to vulnerable enemies, which our enemies are vulnerable when they are frozen, increase my lucky hit chance by 1% for 5 seconds up to 15%. That means that if I hit 15 times, my lucky hit chance is increased by 15%. And that is happening pretty much constantly, and that's crazy. Right here, this node is crucial. You can see it is 45 vulnerable damage because it is being boosted by our Tactician. Tactician grants 125% at max level to all rare nodes, and it's actually boosting this one, which is why it's here. It's pretty much the only reason. It gives us a lot of extra vulnerable damage. And this one, which is, well, cold res, nothing interesting, but it's just a free bonus. We are using the Tactician just for the additional vulnerable damage because there are two things that are crucial for scaling damage. One is vulnerable damage, and second one is critical strike damage because we're critting all the time. All right, and from here, right here, more vulnerable damage, and all of the blue ones, vulnerable, great. So great board for us, absolutely amazing. We don't go down yet. We are going to the left now. Why we are going to the left? We are going to the very unintuitive board. So we have the elemental summoner, which is for conjuration skills, which we're not using conjuration skills. So why do we have this board? Well, this is why. This is the only reason we are here. We want mana. We want 8, 12, 16, 20 maximum mana. We can even have more, but I don't have the willpower yet. I'm actually thinking how to do it, but I don't even have a big problem being at above 100 mana currently, so I'm not sure if I will do that. But this is why we choose this board. Since we already have this board, we obviously want to use the glyph. And here we are taking one that is using willpower. So when we are healthy means I think above, what is healthy, 80% of your health, we are doing extra damage, 55% extra damage. It's, not amazing, but it's something that can utilize willpower, and there is a lot of willpower in this area. So we are getting those two for willpower, and this one is just some int, some all res, nothing fancy. But we are using the imbiber. This is the one that's not the only one I haven't leveled to 21 yet. I think it's level 16. Yeah, there you go, level 16. But this is the mana is the key. So once you unlock those nodes, then you can socket in your amulet this legendary aspect that makes you crit all the time. Because without those nodes, it's just not very sustainable to be critting all the time. So you want to get here fast. That's why it's your second board that you choose. From here, we go to the right. No, this we already covered. So the last two boards, I think the order is irrelevant, and I actually did it differently than I would like to right now. It's not a big difference, but right now, if I was leveling again, I would go for this board first. And this is Searing Heat. And when you look at it, you're like, why? Why are you playing with this board? Two reasons. One, right here, we want to be stacking dexterity again. And this board allows us to have up to 39 dexterity around this glyph. And this glyph control, for every 5 dexterity, increases the damage to crowd controlled targets. So you can see that at the max level, 21, and 35 dexterity allocated, it gives us a whopping 115.8 damage to CC enemies. That's sick. And what do we have here in the middle? Fire damage, useless. So the bonus requirement is not met, but we don't care. We don't do fire damage. 15% critical strike damage. All right, 7.5 here and 7.5 here. So 30% critical strike damage. At what cost? We have dexterity here. So 1 and 2. Those 2 points are pretty much wasted as traveling nodes, but those 3 are sick. Very good value for your Paragon points. Last but not the least, we go to the bottom and we have the Ceaseless Conduit. So again, you might be puzzled. Why? And we have this rare note that says crackling energy damage. We are not using that, but we only have it because right here, we want to be stacking dexterity again, up to 49 dexterity. What does it do? Critical strike damage with core skills. Yeah, that's right. You want as much critical strike damage with your core skills. The Ice Shard is a core skill. And to be able to get the maximum number, 49 is as good as it gets. There are only 2 boards that give you 49. So this one that we have right here and the other one that we have right here. So another vulnerable damage and crit strike damage. So those are my Paragon boards. I will also leave the link in the description if you want to look at it offline at your own pace. And I think that concludes it. So I covered the items, I covered the boards. Let's talk about leveling. I want to say one last thing about leveling. So how do you level quickly? So where's the main city? When you spawn somewhere here, you go through some quests and you reach the main city, right? From this main city, you get a quest that you need to get to Yelesna to talk to some NPC. So you work your way over here. And when you get to this town, you have to go to the right and go to this dungeon, Dead Man's Dredge. Why is that important? Because when you complete this dungeon, that unlocks your legendary aspect that allows you to put the Ice Shards So this is the one. This is the one you unlock. Of course, you unlock that you pierce 3 times only and you deal 25% less damage. But for leveling, this is enough, and this is what gets you through the whole campaign. So you complete this dungeon, and in order to be able to apply it, you have to apply it on either the weapon, the offhand. For leveling also I recommend a two-hander. A two-hander is just more damage, and you don't need the CDR that much when leveling. So don't put it on your two-hander, because two-hander is the main source of damage, and you will be changing it like every 5, every 10 levels. Don't put it there. Put it either on your gloves, on the ring, or on the amulet. The best place would be the amulet, honestly. So if you find any decent amulet, just put it there, and it can stay there for the whole campaign. So another thing that's important is that in order to be able to put that affix on the occultist, you will need 6 of this crafting material called wild. How is it called? Materials. Let's see. Wild crystals. You will need those. You only need 6, but when you create a new character and you don't have any, that's not that easy. So how do you get those? You get those by doing events. So don't do the campaign. Run through the world and try to finish cellars and events on the map. Whenever at the end you will get a chest, and from this chest you might get a rare item or just some materials. Disenchant them and get to 6 wild crystals as fast as you can, because the sooner you get your Ice Shards legendary affix going, this one, the better for you. Once you get that in place, now you do the campaign. Do the campaign, just steamroll through. Approach the pack of mobs, Frost Nova, explode them, go next. Alright, that's enough of the talking. I will leave a few clips how the build is performing, so we can see just how insane the gameplay is and how satisfying it is. On this channel you can see in my other videos some nightmare sigils. Currently I'm pushing as high as I can. I haven't reached my limit yet. I don't know what it is. I did 60 very easily, 65 super easily. So I don't know what the limit is, but I'm pushing, and I will be posting videos of those. Anyhow, thanks for sticking along that long. If you like the video, please subscribe, comment, and leave a like to this video. And until next time, bye bye.